Good. Good morning. My name is Councillor Anthony Kelly, and welcome to the virtual hearing of Ealing Project 1 High Street, Ealing, London, W5. I should be chairing today's meeting and aided by my colleagues, Councillor Anjum and Councillor Sunder. We will comprise today's subcommittee. We also have Cornelia Harding and Jack Roberts, who are clerks to the subcommittee and will be minuting the meeting. We have Alison Luff, who is legal advisor to the subcommittee, and Anjali Garcha, who is the licensing processing team leader, who will introduce the report. In accordance with procedure, I shall invite the licensing officer to introduce the report and provide any clarification on factual issues. Then I'll invite the applicant to present the application, answer any questions, and call upon any witnesses. Then I will invite those who have made any representations or objections to make them and answer any questions or call upon any witnesses. At the conclusion of the hearing, the subcommittee, accompanied by the legal advisor and the Committee Services Democratic Services, will retire to consider the decision. The decision will be given at the end of the meeting and confirmed in 5 working days. If the panel is unable to reach a decision, you should be notified of that within 5 working days. Just quickly, there's people who just introduce yourselves, starting with the applicant. Sir?
My name is Preston Benson. I'm the founder of Really Local Group.
Yeah, you're welcome. And your colleague, I believe?
My name is Nick Grantham. I'm the operations manager for Really Local Group.
And Mrs. Chapman?
Morning, I'm Anne Chapman. I chair Ealing Civic Society, and I submitted a representation on behalf of both the Civic Society and Central Ealing Residents Association, whose chairman is unfortunately not been well.
Many thanks. Just bear in mind, if you're not speaking, to everyone to keep their microphones off to avoid any background noise. Ms. Garcha, over to you.
Sorry, can I just introduce myself? I'm PC Kerry Smart, the police.
I do beg your pardon. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. And we're joined by PC Kerry Smart from Metropolitan Police. Thank you. Anjali.
Yes, this is an application that's been made by Really Local Group Limited for a new premises licence in relation to Ealing Project at 1 High Street, Ealing, London, W5 5DB. 2 representations have been received, and these are from Metropolitan Police Service and an interested party. The licensable activities that are being applied for are, so for films, indoors and live music and supply of alcohol on the premises. The hours applied for are Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. to midnight, Friday to Saturday, 10 a.m. to 2 a.m. and Sunday, 10 a.m. to 2300 hours. And there's recorded music for indoors has also been applied for Monday to Thursday, 9 o'clock to midnight, Friday to Saturday, 9 o'clock to 2 a.m. and Sunday, 9 o'clock to 2300 hours. So the subject premises is currently a community cinema, music and event space, and it's located within the special policy area. So if there's anything else I can assist you with, Chair.
I think you're still on mute, Councillor Kelly.
Is it Mr. Benson leading or?
I'm very happy to.
Well, yeah, I mean, decide amongst yourselves. That's what I'm saying. Whichever one of you part of the.
Well, Nick, do you want to start, and then I'll jump in?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
As sort of was just read out with our premises license application, the idea behind the Ealing project is that it's going to be a community cinema, live music venue, sort of community hub, cafe and bar as well. So the hours that we sort of applied for just is trying to maximize as much use of the space as possible. So when putting in for the later hours, specifically on Friday and Saturday, this is really just to make use of the live music element of the venue. Now, what we're seeing more and more with music acts when we're with some of our previous venues is that the way payments work is on a rev share, usually with the bar. So to get larger acts coming into the venue, we just wanted to apply for a later license in order to accommodate that, to make it possible to bring them into the venue. With the other times that put on there, Monday through Thursday and Sunday as well, we'd be happy to, or would be open to sort of look to put those in line with the special policy. And this was made clear, I think, in conversations I'd had with some of the representations. It's really just the Friday and Saturday opening hours that we'd like to stick with the application.
If I can just jump in, there are good commercial reasons for this. It's very difficult. We're looking and very, very excited to be bringing Ealing its first multi-screen cinema in 14 years. And as part of our offering, live music is a huge element. Everyone knows that Ealing is very famous for film and music. And we have an opportunity in this space to do them both in the same place. When booking acts from a commercial point of view, it's very difficult to attract and to run the types of nights that make our venue a commercial viability by having the current proposed licensed hours that are in the policy. So the reason why we've kindly asked for this extension is because from a commercial point of view, it's very important to us to make our venue as big a success as possible, particularly coming out of the pandemic, which has been obviously very difficult for leisure businesses such as ourselves. I also wanted to point out that we have a track record of responsible behavior and use with respect to late licenses. We have a late license in our cinema in Catford in Lewisham. We have a 2 a.m. close on Friday and a 4 a.m. close on Saturdays, and we've never had any issues whatsoever. So just because we have a late license doesn't mean that we'd be open all that time or that we would always be using those hours or those facilities. But it's important to us to have the optionality to make this a real success. And we thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you. Thank you. So what we do, Nick and George, Mr. Benson, is we ask, we invite questions from the responsible authorities. Then we'll go on to people who've made representations, and then it's the panel councillors. So PC Smart, do you have any questions to the applicants?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just one question. If you were granted the hours for a Friday and Saturday at 2:30 and you're going to have live music, have you considered SIA? Because you've not put anything in the application in relation to SIA.
Yes, absolutely. So given the nature of those events, of course, we'd look to have a dedicated SIA representative on the door, obviously as many as required with the capacities that we'd be looking to have on that evening. And we'd be happy to include that into the license application as well.
Okay, and also for such events, what dispersal policy would you have?
So that would probably be put together in collaboration with the general manager, as well as the company that we use for the SIA and corporate security. We'd put that in place and then offer adequate training to the staff members in site, as well as the management team, relating to that dispersion policy as well.
Yeah, and as part of that, we would be, obviously, I've seen this work very well in other venues, that you want to disperse people away from the residents. And so that would be done in a way that put people back down out to the high street into the more commercial areas to make sure that we're not causing a nuisance, which we're very conscious of. We don't want to be doing that.
Okay. So you would be willing to have SIA on the door when you have live music events?
Yeah, definitely for ticketed live music event. It'd be for our own sake as well as for the licensing to have trained SIA security on the doors.
And the live music events, will they be like promoted events, or how?
It'll be a mix. It'll be a mix of both. You will have promoted events. We're currently working with 2 record labels, Universal and BMG. We, in our group, actually have 3 other live music venues as part of this. And what we see as an opportunity here is to get a circuit of emerging UK music talent. And then that's supported by local music and local talent coming from Ealing. So you have a mix of both promoted events and also directly run events by our venue. Is that fair, Nick?
Yeah, definitely. So a mix of internal promotion, obviously, with local acts, but as well as sort of outside promoters coming in to use the space.
Okay. And last question, what is the capacity of the venue?
I believe it was it 250 for the foyer space, Preston?
I believe around 250 to 300. And the cinema screens, the seats, again, there'll be a small overlap when the films end and the music starts. So there won't be a period where you have fully occupied cinema screens and the music happening. So there'll be a transition, and we've got a nice exit plan that allows people to exit out from the last cinema screen if there were to be an event happening in the bar and foyer. But yeah, I believe Nick is right. It's around 250. So
the live events, where you hoping that they're going to be situated in the foyer, or
well, it's an interesting space, and we are well aware of this site's rather rowdy history. We've cleared out all of the accoutrement that used to be part of the previous regime that occupied this space. And what we have now is a big open space. And when you walk down the stairs, there's a 3-screen cinema to the left. So there's 2 screens of 105 seats each, and there's a smaller screen of 80 seats each. But what we have in the middle is we have a big 10-meter long bar, food, cafe, coffee offering. And during the day, there'll be tables and chairs and places for people to work, for young families to bring their kids. And then there'll be a stage on the wall to the right. So what happens in the evening is we take the tables and chairs away when we have events. And this then becomes a standing room only, or a place for people to enjoy the live music, which is presented in the same multi-use space.
Okay. Will there be a cutoff then for children after a certain time? No children allowed, or if you're going to have such events?
Yeah, I mean, I would question the sanity of a parent bringing a child in after a certain amount of time. So no, yeah, we can commit to that. Yes, absolutely.
You'll be surprised. Okay, no, that's all. That's all. Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Officer. Mr. Chapman, do you have any questions for the applicants?
Thank you. You've clarified the location for music events being in the foyer. I think you said that they would start after patrons had left, generally after patrons had left the cinema. So what sort of time do you intend your start time for music events to be?
There'll be a crossover. So our last screenings are usually 8:30, 9 p.m. at night. And those people usually leave around 10:30, 11. These acts would start anywhere between 8 and 10 p.m. and that would be finishing. And obviously, as part of this dispersal policy, you have to have last orders. You have to start winding things down inside before we close. And so that would, of course, happen on the back end, depending on which hours we can agree on today.
Okay, but so typically 8 to 10 o'clock would be the start time.
Yeah.
Okay, and you also, I think, suggested you could hire various parts of the venue for private events, private parties and so on.
Sure.
Would that could presumably include one of the cinemas, but also the foyer space, could it?
Yes, it could.
So, and private parties, again, you could therefore accommodate 250 people in the foyer at a private event. Yes,
we could. And I would love, and it's a shame we're still all on Zoom. I would love to have done this in person, and I would welcome all of you to come see the space. We're about 2 months from being complete. And I think when you get a sense of the space, this will make a lot more sense. But when we say foyer, it's a huge, cavernous, 20-foot high ceiling. It's a big space.
Okay, I think that's all the questions I have now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillors, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask one question regarding this sort of live and recorded music you would be playing. So can you please give us some information as to what would it be? And also, do you have any provision like soundproofing just to ensure that it's not loud enough and it doesn't disturb the neighborhood?
Yeah, no, two good questions. Let's start with the last one first. It's absolutely essential in a good modern cinema to have very good soundproofing. Nobody likes to go to the cinema and hear what's going on in the movie next door. And we don't want people in the bar listening to what's going on in the movie because maybe they won't buy a ticket and go see it. So we've spent a lot of money soundproofing the space. And in our relationship with British Land, in our agreement with British Land, we can't be causing a nuisance to the tenants above us. So soundproofing and ensuring that the speakers, we're spending a lot of money on acousticians and making sure that the music itself is not causing a distraction. So yes, you have our commitment on that. What kind of music? Really good question. It's really what people in Ealing want to see. We've been talking to, I think it was the founder of Bhangra Music. There's a huge South Asian music population demand that we want to cater to. There's also kind of more classic rock, dance music. It really is. We want to cater. We'd like to have an event that all of you would like to come and see, as well as the other residents of Ealing. So we are not a genre-specific venue. It really is driven by the desires and the aspirations of the community.
Yeah, just to follow on with Preston, the tech fit out that we're putting in there is really to be as flexible as possible. So we'll be able to have sort of DJs and sound systems put in, but also cater to sort of, as you say, more classical sort of jazz or rock music as well. It's really just to make sure we're as flexible as possible in that space so we can cater for all needs and all demands in the area.
Councillor Anjum? Councillor Sumner?
I have no questions, thank you, Chair.
Okay. So, yeah, if I could just couple of points of detail. I believe I understand the concept of your operation, and I'm quite enthusiastic about it. Given the previous nature of that location, it's certainly a step in the right direction. Could you sort of describe your alcohol offer, how it supplements your cinema experience and recorded cinema, and your meal, and how, you know, what will happen at 2 o'clock? What would be happening at 2 o'clock on a Saturday morning or a Sunday morning,
yeah,
or a Friday night? How do you envisage, what would you be serving to who? And then at 2:30, everybody needs to leave the premises. So I think that's at the core of the antisocial behavioural issues that the police might have on the high street at a given time. And why can that not happen at 1:30? Why can't that happen at 12:30? I want to understand your rationale.
I get it.
Of alcohol at that time.
Understood. So let me just answer I'm going to let Nick answer the first two questions. Let me just take the last one. It's very, very important to attract the types of acts we want to attract, the headlining acts to this venue, that we are able to have these later license hours on the weekend. And like I said, we don't need to be selling alcohol up to 2:30 or 2, because that would be an operational nightmare for Nick and his team. And I don't want to cause them that sort of headache. So we know there has to be a winding down process with respect to this. But the reason why it's really important we need these hours, because it's commercially the only way we're going to be able to get the types of acts we want to get in. Nick,
you're sort of contradicting yourself there, Mr. Benson. I'm trying to work out what it is. Is it that you want to serve alcohol or not?
Yeah.
No, I'm not contradicting at all. I'm saying
Yeah.
I know from an operational point of view.
Yeah.
We've all been to the bar or a nightclub in the past. You don't serve people all the way up until the point you tell them to leave, because that is an absolute operational nightmare. I've lived it. I've experienced it. I don't want to put my team through that. So what I'm saying is, and I'm going to let Nick talk about the winding down process, which you've correctly identified. What does that look like between, say, 1 a.m. and 2:30? And I think as part of that, Nick, we need to talk about, we're not a shop bar. What is the range of alcohol being served? And we do have a food offer, and feeding people and making sure they have a lot of water is a great way as well of avoiding these types of situations. But I'll hand it over to Nick.
Thank you.
So from my point of view, from an operations point of view, it's for live music and the venues that I've run in the past, is you're going to see a large amount of sales going on, usually between 12:30 and 1:30, with sales then sort of slowing down after that point. So we're asking for the 2 a.m. license to give that sort of flexibility on either side, with things likelihood start winding down around 1:30, usually when it comes to bar sales anyway. The mix of alcohol that we're looking to sell will probably be draft beers, wines, and then your usual spirits. We wouldn't be having any super strength lagers as part of our application was put in there, or we'd nothing above what you'd usually find on the back bar of a spirits wise as well. But as I sort of said from previous experience working on these venues, is definitely for live music, you find a large portion of the sales are running between probably just past midnight to about 1:30, definitely if you're looking at a younger audience. So as Preston mentioned, there'll be a wind down usually from that 1:30 period when people know that the night's ending. Those sales will be slowing down, at which point we'll make water. And again, this is from personal experience, you make water and everything readily available, and the night will start slowing down at that point. The 2 a.m. license is really just to give us flexibility in what we can book, because if we're working with external promoters, one of the things that happens at the moment is that you have something called a rev share. So what that means is that the promoter will take a certain percentage of bar sales to make it more of an attractive place to play. So what they're looking for is a larger period of time that they're able to get that percentage of bar sales from. And so as Preston sort of alluded to in his previous answer, we might not be able to get certain acts if they know we haven't got a 2 a.m. license, because that's effectively limiting the amount of money they'll be able to make on the acts. So the 2 a.m. is really from a flexibility. From my own personal operational experience, nights like this will usually wind down from 1:30 onwards if you've got a 2 o'clock close. It just means that you do make a lot of sales, and as Preston said, commercially viable sales between midnight and 1:30.
Okay. So that is useful. That's very useful. But I just want to explore the theme a bit more. It's about that dispersal at that time, So I could come and rent your venue and rent the foyer and buy a meal package, etc., etc. In some ways, if we had the opportunity to look at your SIA and dispersal policy, it may have been useful. But perhaps if you could expand on what you're aiming to do, how do you do it? When does the band close? When does the cinema close? Where would they be moved to? Which entrances will they come out of?
Yeah, of course. And I'd be happy to expand on that. So as we sort of mentioned earlier, with the cinema, and Preston mentioned there'd be an overlap. What we'd be looking to do is we've got very luckily a hallway that leads from all of the cinema screens out through the main entrance, which doesn't actually take people through the foyer. So when we sort of say we're asking the people in the cinemas to leave, very handily they can leave through that corridor and up through the main entrance out onto the Broadway. Now, in regards to the dispersion policy, when it comes to a later event, depending on, and this is all hypothetical until we get the sort of acts in, say the act finishes at 1:30, at that point, usually you'd have house music on, the lights would be going up, you'd have staff on hand to be giving out any water or anything like that to people leaving the building. We'd have our SIA security on as well to start asking people to leave, obviously finishing any drinks before heading out onto the street because we're an on-sales licensee only. And they'd be gradually leading people up through the main entrance out onto 1 High Street Broadway. At that point, we'd have clear signage leading them out and near the entrance to say, please be mindful of our neighbours when you're sort of leaving out, and to keep any noise or any disruption to a minimum. Security would then probably most likely be directing them along the High Street away from any residential areas, leading them straight to Ealing Broadway, which would be the closest station if night tube is running by then. If not, it'd be to the nearest transport as well. So I'd say usually music will finish probably about, I'd say Preston probably about 1:30. It won't be running straight up till 2 a.m.
Yeah, 1:30 too. That's right.
Okay. That's useful. I've got no further questions at this point. Do you have, so at this point, we ask if you have any questions to us as an applicant to us. Bearing in mind the police have made some suggestions, you may want to ask them about SIA, etc., etc.
Yeah, I think that is a great question. I think what you just said a minute ago, Councillor, around the dispersal and the SIA, I mean, this is something that is very important and it's something that we can beef out, and we're very happy to commit to in writing in the coming days. So I think we have 5 days here. So I'd like to ask PC Carey, is this something that we could perhaps work on together this week with respect to making sure that we get this all documented to make sure everyone is very comfortable with what we're proposing?
Yeah, certainly. I'm happy to do that. But I think it would be in everyone's interest if we can try and sort it out today in relation to the SIA. I mean, I can go through it more in my representation, but I'm more than happy to speak to you and have a conversation with you. But I think we need to discuss it here today as well. I think it'd be helpful if we can discuss it today.
Okay.
Right. And perhaps if you could, any question you'd like to ask Ms. Chapman in regards to, her concerns?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what we've proposed or what Nick's laid out with respect to how we're going to disperse people. And again, I see this work very effectively in a place like Printworks, which is in the middle of a residential area in Canada Water, where you actually get people signposted out as people leave. And so there's sort of a human chain of people that work for us that direct people in the right direction and away from the residential area. Ms. Chapman, would that assuage some of your concerns with respect to late night antisocial noise and behavior?
I think you've got to realise that Ealing is a very different type of area to other places you've talked about, Canada Water, even say Lewisham, Catford. It is a much more built up traditional area. It's not so easy to pass people through more open areas. Obviously, anything that can be done to direct people in the right direction is helpful. But as I say, it is probably something that is quite difficult to do, particularly as you've highlighted, if there may not be any night transport. Hopefully the night tube will be coming back sometime, but it's not there at the moment. So I think people inevitably will have a tendency to go through residential areas and will have a tendency possibly to gather. But anything you can do obviously is welcome.
No, thank you. And like I said, we're very conscious of this. And I think in the areas we do have venues, they are, we have something called Peckham Levels in Peckham, which is in the middle of a very built up area, Catford as well. And I think it's just not letting people congregate and stand, and it's making sure we have more than 1 or 2 people outside to help move people along and direct them to the high street where there are ample bus routes as well. Oh, sorry. Yes, PC Carey.
Sorry, I'll ask a question after you've spoken. Sorry.
I was just saying I share Ms. Chapman's concerns, and we will do our absolute best to make sure we disperse people up to the high street and away from the residential area.
Okay. How many members of staff are you looking to employ?
Nick?
I'll take on this one. I think roughly to begin with, we'd be looking about 16 to 17 staff on the team. So that includes, I'd say, 4 full-time managers and then the rest general assistants who'll be working in the cinema and bar. In regards to SIA, we work with a company called Corporate Security. Depending on need, they're very flexible with their rota. So depending on the size of the event we'd be able to rota the appropriate amount of staff on to cover that.
And would you have more staff on if for live events, or would the 16 to 17 plus SIA, would they be sufficient?
Yeah, obviously we'd staff up for a larger event. So off the top of my head, I imagine for a full event, full live music for about 250 people, off the top of my head, I'd probably have 8 of our general assistants as well as 2 managers on site. And then in regards to SIA, that could probably be between 5 and 6, I imagine, for a full capacity.
And we make this a condition of our, if we brought in an extra promoter, whatever, that'd be a condition of working with them. They would have to contribute towards that.
Okay.
Yeah, usually they contribute towards security fees. Every
Friday and Saturday, are you looking to have live events every Friday and Saturday, or is it just as when you have the booking?
No.
So if you don't have an event, will the premise be open till 2:30, or
No.
will you close it after the cinema?
Yes.
Yeah, just to follow up, Preston, we wouldn't be looking, this wouldn't be a weekly occurrence. Obviously, you know, it depends on the acts that we're able to get in, and we're also very flexible with the acts that we're doing. Not every act is going to want to go on till 1:30, 2 o'clock. Like I said, it really is just there for the flexibility. Most nights, the venue will be closing in line with the end film times, which Preston mentioned earlier, would usually falls between 11 and 12 o'clock, depending on the run times, which have been excessively long recently.
We're not a nightclub, right? It's a different kind of venue, and what that means is the majority of our revenues are really driven by all the other exciting things happening. What we want to do is have this extra optionality that we've been talking about today. So as and when we have demand, we're able to flex up and meet that demand.
Okay, so yeah, you're not going to operate sort of like a nightclub type event every weekend.
No, definitely not.
Please, no.
I haven't got the energy.
Nick and I like to go to bed at a decent time.
Well, just bear in mind, we've got a live YouTube feed that stays on YouTube forevermore. So we've heard it from the horse's mouth.
You got it.
No more from me, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, before we sort of go on to summing up and deliberations, I meant to sort of confirm any conditions offered or agreed. Now, I'm quite mindful that you're willing to meet us with the SIA provision, but I don't think we can confirm those conditions now, because it's a piece of work that we're not really. It's not what we're designed to do as councillors. It's something that you need to perhaps. But if we can offer a condition in principle that you will work with the Metropolitan Police to have the appropriate dispersal and security arrangements.
Chair, can I just come in there?
I need to hand this over now, really, you know.
Chair, the representatives haven't made their
no, I know. I'm aware of that. And they can come in afterwards, and they can and I can say it's not enough, but if there was some understanding now between the applicant and the Metropolitan Police, it would be the start. So, will you commit to undertake that piece of work?
Yeah, definitely. So if it was an inclusion in the application, we can speak to Impact, who put together some of our application and put in a condition in regards to SIA staff for licensed events. And as Preston mentioned earlier, PC Smart, we'd be more than willing to put together a dispersion policy to send across for you to review and consult, and we'd be happy to include that in there as well.
Okay,
that's fine.
Thank you. Right, so now really it's, I mean, Mrs. Chapman, do you want to make any comment in regard to that? before you go on to summing up?
I don't want to make any comments, but as I imagine PC Smart does, we want the opportunity to make our representation.
Yeah, sure, fine. You'll get that. You'll get that now. In which case, we'll go to that part. PC Smart, and you get the last. You get the last opportunity as an applicant, and so you get the right of reply to address anything that comes up in the summing up. Mr. Chapman.
Want me to go first, Chair, or do you want?
Yes, I beg your pardon. It's yourself to go first. Yes.
Okay, no problem. Well, we've heard quite a lot of it in relation to the premise being within the Ealing Town Centre Special Policy Area. We've discussed the hours that obviously I put in my representation, that they're slightly over Sunday to Thursday, but obviously they are excessive on a Friday and a Saturday. But that's been discussed this morning, and obviously the police have concerns around the dispersal policy and the antisocial behaviour that comes from that, with a venue obviously dispersing 250 to 300 people at sort of 2:30 in the morning. So and obviously we haven't seen a dispersal policy, so there are concerns around that. But as I said, they are outside of core hours. I have the applicant has put conditions in the application, and we welcome them. However, I have submitted in my representation additional conditions which the police believe are proportionate and necessary for the licensing objectives to be promoted. One of them is the CCTV. That's to be for 31 days. So I don't know if the applicant would agree to that. Obviously, 2 is the toughened glass must be used and must be continued to use in any additional hours. No glass or glass bottles to be taken from the premise, and the bar areas to be regularly cleared and emptied of glasses and bottles. No open vessels to be taken outside of the curtilage. And I think the most important one, and well, they're all important, but I think we need to clarify today, is the SIA. The police believe it's important that if the licence is to be granted with such hours, then there needs to be SIA to obviously deal with dispersal from the premise. And not only that, just to ensuring that people that are entering are obviously, I don't know if there's going to be a search policy and how you're going to, how the staff are going to monitor who's coming and going from such events. So I think SIA is a very important condition to have. So, and that's basically my representation. It's just in relation to the core hours. They're over the hours, and obviously the additional conditions.
Thank you very much, PC Smart. Mr. Chapman.
Thank you. What I'd like to start by saying is that I want to make it clear that we're not opposed to the initiative by the really local group, particularly the reintroduction of cinema to central Ealing, which those of us who live here will know we've not had for very many years. The community use of the cafe, and particularly as an exhibition space in the foyer as well, I think sounds extremely interesting and will be popular. I've seen the video that the really local group produced, which talks, amongst other things, about the lack of live music venues in central Ealing. Yes, it's true. Obviously, there are pubs which are used for live music. There is the Ealing Club, which is used only, albeit it doesn't have its own premises. Robert Holcomb spoke about what he's, I know him very well, in fact, worked with him and sponsored events at the Ealing Club. So well aware of his work. But I think the key issue is the adherence to the council's licensing policy in regards to the special areas. The core hours was set down in consultation with local groups and councillors for good reason, which is to preserve the amenity of those areas and to ensure that there are not problems from venues. And what we're looking to operators is to respect that section of the policy. And I think the police would agree that outside those hours, there is more likelihood of there being problems which will be difficult to contain and will particularly and potentially involve the police in more work. So I think we managed in the discussions I had at the very last minute with Nick Grantham, because unfortunately as we've seen, their agent didn't really assist them in this process, on all hours, slight reduction in hours other than on Friday and Saturday nights. I've heard absolutely nothing, I'm afraid, today that reassures me about the operation of the premises as a venue for live music, or indeed for private events, promoted events, DJ events. We know, and I know that every premise must be treated on its merits, but we know from other places, these are just the sort of events that are more problematical. They attract large groups of people, and those people can be ill-disciplined, particularly when they've consumed alcohol. This revenue share worries me as well. The fact that you actually said that you want to maximise bar revenue so that the acts can get a maximum income. That suggests that not that these are live music spaces, but they are actually places where you're trying to sell as much, get people to buy as much alcohol as possible. And that obviously is worrying. I can't actually see why acts can't start earlier and end earlier. They don't need to only start at 10 o'clock at night. And so people are still buying drinks or still are there after midnight. Midnight to end music and to end alcohol sales with the half-hour wind down, which you recognise, closing at 12:30 would seem to me to be perfectly adequate and will be far less of a potential problem in the local area. So I think that I think is probably all I need to say is that really just to reinforce the points I made in the representation. I'm not reassured by what I've heard about the potential use of the venue. And just to put one more point, as I did put in one of my emails, if you're not planning to have late night events that regularly, you do have the option of temporary event notices. When such a possible event comes up, put in a temporary event notice. The police have the opportunity to review that, to consider particularly the operators, and if they consider that the potential operators are likely to cause a problem, they can object to that temporary event. We can't, other people can't, but obviously if a number of events are then held without problem, that then potentially down the line allows you to put in a request for a variation which has some evidence to back up your assertions that there won't be problems. So I would say that would be a way forward. Stick with the licence being granted for core hours and to consider the option of temporary event notices if and when they're required for the odd other event. So that really is the gist of what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Chapman. Okay. Councillors, do you have any comments to make before the applicants sums up?
Chair.
Councillor Sumner.
Chair, I've heard nothing about smoking policies or whatever. Presumably there's no smoking allowed on this venue and no smoking around this venue.
Yeah, where will people smoke?
Will there be smoking is the question.
Well, yes. I mean, how do you? Yeah, I mean, you know.
Are we talking about drugs as well or not?
Were you allowed to answer questions, or I have to wait until the end?
Please. No, just yeah.
Okay. Well, start off with there'll be a zero drugs policy. I need to make that abundantly clear from the get-go. In regards to smoking, it'd be we'd need to submit another sort of outdoor permit license. What we envisioned is to the side of the venue in the open, there's sort of a small sort of alleyway where we'd have barriers, and that'd be a set aside designated smoking area. And we'd have, obviously that'd be kept clear by our own venue staff, and we'd have ample sort of ashtrays, bins and stuff like that, which we have outside of other venues to be available. So yeah, that'd be outside the front. Obviously, again, that would be monitored by SAI staff in the event of in the likelihood of an event. But that would need to be, I think it's a separate license application for that, for use of pavements. But yeah, I can cross that.
Alison, you might be able to offer some clarity on that for us.
I think a license application, a street trading application is only needed if you're going to put something out there permanently. I think just sort of designating a space, it depends on whether it's within the premises control. If it's actually on within their land, then there isn't any further application needed. If it's just an area of public highway, then that's something that if that can be subject to, for instance, a condition about that being monitored.
I mean, Alice, I'm just envisaging that you know, I'm just doing sort of photographic snapshot of that location where that little bit goes around. I think that forms part of the British land curtilage, because it's blocked. It's the paving that belongs underneath the canopy, as opposed to Ealing Council footpath, and it doesn't block the footpath to the side of the highway. So that piece of work would have to be done.
Yeah, that's where we sort of scoped out to have a dedicated smoking area. As with our other venues, we have barriers that we use usually for outdoor seating. So these would be used in that event as well.
Thank you. Is that useful, Councillor Sumner?
I'd just like to ask a further question, which would be about what time are people allowed to carry on attending this venue? I mean, will there be a cut-off time? Whereas, you know, you've been in, you've gone out, you can't come back in, or not?
What's last century, late, you know?
Yeah, I believe that was already included in our application. That'd be an hour prior to the ending of the evening that people would be allowed access into the venue.
So they can come and go as they wish, yes?
Up until an hour before the end of the event.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So, Councillor Andrew, you got any questions, comments?
Okay, with the
Thank you.
present.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So it's for the applicants to sum up, and obviously, if you want to reply to any of the matters raised by the police, the councillors, and Mrs. Chapman, please include that in your summing up.
Sounds good. Nick, can I start this? And then if I miss anything, thanks. We are very, very excited to be opening this venue in Ealing, which is an amazing borough full of creative talent that hasn't really had a place to call home now for a very long time. As Ms. Chapman said, it's been almost 14 years since the borough of Ealing, and particularly here in Ealing Broadway. I know we had the View in Acton, which closed during lockdown, but Ealing Broadway to have a cinema, and we are delighted to be able to offer this amenity to the community. Our venue, the Ealing Project, is much more than a cinema, featuring live music and digital art in a way that's not been done before, not only in Ealing, but all over London. And I think there's some really, really interesting stats that I leave you with. Half of the population of the borough of Ealing is under 36, and 25% are under 18. This is a young group of the community that perhaps hasn't had a venue or a place to create. It hasn't had a place to create and speak to them, but our venue will do more. It will speak to them, but it will also speak to all residents of the community in ways by providing lots and lots of different amenities, lots of different activities. We really see our venue as being a place for all. So we look forward to opening this venue, and we look forward to welcoming you all in a couple of short months. I'll let Nick talk more about the technical response.
Yeah, but I do share Preston's sentiments that we are very excited about bringing this venue. Just to answer PC Smart some of your questions, we'd be happy to include the conditions in there in regards to CCTV being kept on there for over 31 days. That's fine. Also, for the use of toughened glass for any glassware in the venue, we'd be happy to bring that in as a condition, and that no regular glassware would be used outside of the premises at any point. Obviously, I think it was already included in the application, but we would be keeping the frontage clear of any debris or anything like that from the outside as well. In regards to SIA security, we'd be happy to include a condition in there that we would have dedicated SIA security on hand for any ticketed live events going on past a certain hour. Obviously, for day-to-day trade with cinemas, it might not be a requirement, but we'd obviously include a condition in there for any live music going past a certain time. We'd have dedicated SIA security, and we're happy to include that as a condition as well. And then lastly, in regards to the dispersion policy, I'd be more than happy to put something together before the application, obviously in line with health and safety requirements, to send across to you for consideration as well, and for any amendments that you see fit, and we'd be happy to make that included in there as well.
And you just got like a version of really local group's version of point list, right? Where doesn't he speak and then someone gives all the facts at the end?
Yeah. That's usually how we work, but yeah. I just like, so on those points, and then obviously Ms. Chapman, as sort of previously mentioned, obviously we're looking for extended hours on the Friday and Saturday, but I think there was only minor differences in the core licensing hours between Monday and Thursday and on Sunday as well. So if that was a condition, we'd be happy to include it. I think it was 11:30 is the licensing hours on the core ones, Monday to Thursday, and I think it's probably the same on Sunday as well. We'd be happy to amend our application to fit that as well, running Monday through Thursday. Okay, great. But yeah, that's everything on me. Like I said, we're very excited though, and we're looking forward to opening.
Thank you very much. Alison, before you retire, is there anything?
No, Chair. I don't think there's anything else that hasn't been covered.
Can I just ask one more thing, just in relation to the applicant has offered up the conditions that I put in my representation. Would you, Nick or President, would you be happy for any such live events on a Friday and Saturday? There needs to be a search policy to be as a condition on the licence. Because I think that's quite important. If you're going to have live events happening, then I think you're going to have search policy.
No, definitely. And I'd agree with that, definitely for live music. I mean, one, obviously for looking for any contraband coming in, but two, from a sales perspective, we don't want people bringing anything into the venue that they shouldn't. So at previous venues that we've operated, we have search policies in place, definitely for live music venues, which we put in together with the company that we use for security, so they're aware, and we'll staff appropriately to make sure that happens. So yes, happy for that to be included as well.
Okay, that's sort of, I put that in as sort of an addendum to the SIA policy, item number 5. Okay, wish to retire to deliberate. It's 11:29 by my watch. I would anticipate that we're back here at 12 o'clock, but we reserve the right to take longer should we need to. Just bear in mind, everybody, that we also have another hearing coming in straight afterwards. So forgive us if somebody's let into a room by mistake. Just bear with us. But you know that could happen. So I'll see you at 12 o'clock. So you'll be asked to leave the room, then come back around 12 o'clock.
Chair, are we using the same link for the 12 o'clock hearing, or is it completely different?
Jack, can you confirm? I think it's the same link.
Yeah, yes, Chair, it's the same link.
Yeah.
Okay, and so if it runs over, we're all going to be late then, is that just so?
That's correct. Yeah, okay. It's the same chair, it's the same officers.
Perfect.
But
All
what
right, no
happens is
problem.
people might, Mr. Panchow, people may appear who perhaps.
Yeah, I just didn't want to be late and obviously
No.
on this
No.
link.
That's great. Okay, so I'll see you at 12 o'clock. Thank you very much.
Thank you.